finishes off in style. A magnificent strike into the crowd. India lift the World Cup after 28 years.
Dhoni finishes off in style. A magnificent strike into the crowd. India lift the World Cup after 28 years. The team that has just won the World Cup and the team that hasn't lost a Test series since 2008. How would you feel if the same team loses 60 Test series in the next 4 years? And this is what happened with that Indian team. After winning the World Cup, an era started which every Indian cricket fan, and especially Test cricket fans, would want to forget. The Indian Test is an era in history in which a captain, a great player, and many other players had to sacrifice their careers. India dominates the Test series in Australia and England and fights in every Test match. In that phase, it was like a dream for India. Winning was a distant dream. In fact, it felt like India wasn't even able to fight in any Test match. That's why it remained as the darkest phase of Indian cricket history. Before the 2011 World Cup, the Indian team wasn't in such a state, which happened after that World Cup. In fact, India wasn't losing a single Test series from 2008 to 2011 World Cup. The Indian team was going through a winning phase under Dhoni's captaincy. When Anil Kumble decided to retire after the third Test in the 2008 World Cup, the Indian team's captaincy was in Dhoni's hands. At that time, the Indian team was full of match winners. Sachin Tendulkar, Virendra Sehwag, Rahul Dravid, and Gautam Gambhir were managing the batting lineup. And along with that, Baji Irfan Pathan, Sreesanth bowling. This winning phase started in October 2008. India had come to Australia to play a 3-match series, and India had named that series as 2-0. In that series, India's batting lineup contributed the most. After that, till the 2011 World Cup, India hadn't lost a single series, whether it was home or away. India made the series draw for the first time in South Africa, made the series draw in Sri Lanka as well, and won the series in New Zealand. All this was a big deal for India, and those winnings still hold record and memory. In 2009, during this phase, Indian team came to number 1 in the Test in the captaincy of Amazon, and then named itself in the Test. It was the first time that India became the number 1 Test team in the world. In 2011, India also named itself in the 50 Overs World Cup. And at this moment, India had got the tag of invincible, a new captain who hadn't stopped for the last 3 to 4 years. And after one, India is winning a Test series. What could be a better thing for India than that? But after the 2011 World Cup, everything changed. When India won the 2011 World Cup, after that, away series was enough. India's first series was against West Indies, which they named themselves without any problem. And why wouldn't it happen? After 2002, India hadn't lost a single Test match against West Indies. Test series was far away. In that series, Virat Kohli made his Test debut, who was dropped in the next England tour. After that, India goes to England to play a series of 4 Test matches. And it wouldn't be wrong to say that the number 1 Test team's downfall started in that series. Series was against England, and that too in England. India's squad was looking very balanced and strong. The good news for India was that when India toured England last time in 2007, then India won the Test series there for the 3rd time, which was very memorable. But this time, England team was ready to take revenge for that old defeat. And that's what happened. In the first match, India lost in Lords. In the second match, Dravid scored a century. But Stuart Broad's hat-trick turned the game around, and India lost in that too. In the third match, English captain Alastair Cook's 294 runs made England lose 3-0. And finally in the 4th Test match, which was on the oval field, India lost by 1 inning and 8 runs. India didn't just win a single match in that series. In fact, they were in a bad shape to draw. In some match, English captain scored 294 runs. And in some match, Ian Bell scored 235. Every player of England played in that series. And you can guess that. In that series, England scored the most runs. But they didn't get the player of the series. That competition was between England players. In that series, India was in such a bad shape that Rahul Dravid scored the most runs from India, who was standing close to retirement. This series became a black box in Indian Test cricket, which removed India from #1 ranking. England won that series 4-0, and after October 2008, this was India's first defeat in Test series. India was rising from the whitewash by England. At that time, another big challenge was in front of them. That challenge was not anyone else, but the infamous Australian team. And the biggest challenge was that India had to tour Australia in the BGT, which means one more away tour. India was struggling in the Test series, and this was clearly seen in the last England series. India had already won the last 2 BGT trophies, in 2008 and 2010, but still, the Indian team didn't have much confidence, because at that time, it was impossible for the Asian team to defeat the Australian team in the Test series. The only hope was that of a draw series, because the Indian fans could clearly see the defeat from 0-4. Although Australia was going through a transition phase at that time, where their star players, Vaughan, McGrath, Simons, and Angel Chris had retired. There, the team was not as strong as before, but the Australian team was playing at home, and maybe that was enough reason to beat India at that time. On top of that, the informed Michael Clarke and the rest of the players took out the remaining strength in that series. The first test was a boxing test match, which was played in Melbourne, with the amazing performance of debutant Ed Coven and James Pattinson. India lost that match by 122 runs. This did not stop here. In the next match, Captain Michael Clarke played his career's best innings and scored 329 runs not out. And India lost that match by 1 inning and 68 runs. India was now behind 2-0, and it was also doubtful that they would win the next matches. Even in the last 2 matches of the series, India was losing badly and one-sidedly. India lost the third match by 1 inning and the fourth match by almost 300 runs. In the last match, even though Virat Kohli gave up his maiden Test run, but those innings could not stop India's second whitewash within a year. India had lost their Test after the #1 ranking England series. Australia named that border-covering trophy 4-0, and Rahul Dravid and Regis Laxman played their last international matches from India. And the saddest thing is that the fourth Test of that series was the only match that India took to the last day, because the rest of the matches went on for a maximum of 4 days. India seemed to be struggling the most in this series. But India had a positive thing that India was invincible at home as usual. After 2004, India did not come to any home series. And the #1 Test team of that time, England, came to challenge this. India may be passing through its lowest form, but that Test series was in India. And everyone in MS Dhoni's captaincy thought that this team would definitely win. But that England team had some other plans. India easily won the first Test in Ahmedabad. Because of Chheteshwar Pudra's double century, England got 9 wickets. India had already taken the lead of 1-0, but no one knew that in the next 3 matches, everything would turn upside down. The second match was in Wankhede, and the third match was in Kolkata, 2 such prestigious grounds that have hosted many historic matches in India's Test history. India was about to lose the Test series on those grounds. England played the second match in Alastair Cook's captaincy, and Cook and Kevin Pietersen completely changed the course of the match. Cook and Peterson's centuries gave India the lead of 90 runs in the first inning, and the remaining work of taking wickets was done by Monty Pinison with 11 wickets. India lost that match with 10 wickets. The contribution of those 3 players of England defeated India in their home, which was impossible. Kevin Pietersen got the man of the match for his 186 runs win. The next match was in Kolkata. And then the story of the last match was repeated. It had become an important match for India, as India was now in a situation of losing the series after losing that match. And it happens. India, same as the last match, also loses this match with 7 wickets. In this match, Cook played a great party of 190 runs. He brought India to the back foot. The next match is a draw in Nagpur, and India loses the Test series at home after 8 years. In this series, Cook dominated with batting and captaincy. Scoring 190 and 123 in 2 Test matches in a row is not a common thing. Along with that, Kevin Pietersen and Monty Pinison also contributed a lot. And England won that series 2-1. That series win was so big for England. That England's former captain Michael Vaughan even said that that series win was bigger than England's 2010 to 2011 Ashes win. In the 2010 to 11 Ashes, Australia lost the Ashes at home after 24 years, which became one of the greatest achievements of England. 54 years of pain in Australia. After losing that series, India whitewashed Australia and West Indies in the home series. After losing the 2011 to 12 series to Australia 4-0, India lost 4-0 at home and took revenge from Australia, and also defeated West Indies 2-0. But India's difficult time was about to start again. In 2011, India, the #1 Test team, lost after that England whitewash. And after that series, India also lost one home series, which was very heartbreaking. 2 home series win made India reach the second number. But now that was also going to be difficult, because the next 4 Test tours were outside India in the Sena countries. Again, after 2011 to 12, India had to travel to Sena countries to play Test series. And India's major legends had retired. And now India had a fresh team. With this, India seems to be struggling as usual in those 4 series. 2013 India Tour of South Africa lost by 0-1. 2014 India Tour of New Zealand lost by 0-1. In both Test matches of that series, captain Brandon McCallum scored a double century and a triple century, 2-24 in first Test and 3-03 in second. In that series, it was impossible to stop the Bears. And because of that contribution, New Zealand defeated India 1-0. 2014 India Tour of England lost by 1-3. This series proved to be a nightmare for both India and Virat Kohli. Virat Kohli, who was touring England for the first time, disappointed the team and the country. Despite being an experienced batsman of the team, he could not score a single 50 in that series. And despite being ahead of India 1-0, India lost that series by 1-3. Although India did win the Test match of the Lords, in which Ishant Sharma put his career's best spell, but the Indian team lost the last 3 matches. 2014 to 15 India Tour of Australia lost by 0-2. In all these series, this border was cut off from the most famous Indian fans. The main reason being Virat Kohli, because unlike his last England tour, he made 692 runs in this series with 4 centuries. India used to lose in every series before this and used to come back, but in this series, India gave the most fights. Apart from Virat Kohli, in that series, KL Rahul, Murali Vijay and Ajinkya Rahane also gave their best. But despite all this, India was behind in every match. Because overall, the players of Australia were in form and there was an advantage of home condition. But in that series, there was an incident which we Indian fans can never forget. India had lost its 7th Test series in the last 3 to 4 years. And after the 3rd Test of that series, India had fallen to the 7th rank in the Test. So after the 3rd Test, former Indian captain MS Dhoni decided to retire from the Test. Dhoni left India at the rank of 7th. And then we got to know what was the effect of losing in the army on the Indian captain. The whole team was in shock as these 4 years were like hell for India. Here, India mostly faced defeat. And the popularity of India in the Test had also fallen to a great extent. Captain and most legends had retired, because of which the team had to suffer a lot. And that's why that struggling phase had become the darkest phase of Indian Test history. But in the midst of all this, we had experienced players to play in the army, like Virat Kohli, Murali Vijay, Chheteshwar Pujara, and Ajinkya Rahane, who took India back to the rank of #1. Comment down India #1, after which we can talk about it in its second part. If you want second part, in which India has cited all the odds and got back the position of #1. If you want to know about the Test downfall of the England team, then comment below this video. If you want to know about India's match-fixing scandal, then comment below this video. Thanks for watching.